So let's talk about two sides to self-esteem, okay? Or two elements of self-esteem. Because if I were to ask you to define what self-esteem is, how would you define the word self-esteem? Anyone have a definition? Value.
You wake up in the morning in a bad mood, you look in the mirror, and all of a sudden
Yeah, Rowan, I'm beginning to believe you about the arrogance. Very good, very good. Good, good. Yeah.
I think it's to follow your intuition and feeling comfortable in your life at whatever point you are at.
Okay, so to feel comfortable with yourself. Just to feel comfortable.
And following your intuition when you're feeling comfortable. Like going with that gut feeling.
Okay, because you can trust yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay, good. We're going to talk about there's a lot to those two words, self-esteem. And there are a lot of elements to it. We're going to talk about two primary elements that belong to self-esteem. And one is competence, and one is intrinsic worth. Both of them are very important. We're going to start with competence. Intrinsic worth is very deep. Okay? And even more challenging than competence. So we're going to go from the light to the heavy, okay, or from the easier to the more difficult. What is competence? That I feel capable. I feel competent. That I am able to. A lot of times children don't want to do certain things, they just don't feel competent. Okay? Some of that is nature. Certain children by nature feel they have more confidence, and certain children by nature don't. The question is what we can do for them in order to assist them. And then there's a feeling of intrinsic worth. Intrinsic worth is very different than competence. It's much deeper. Intrinsic worth means that I am intrinsically, from my deepest core, worthy. I don't need to be able to do anything in order to be worthy. I am worthy. Okay? So that's where my worthiness is independent of anything. It is harder to build, but we can assist. We can assist our children in developing that. Of course, in both of these, it begins with ourselves. When our children see us as not feeling competent, it's going to be very hard for us to give them a feeling of competence. When our children see us as not feeling intrinsically worthy, it's hard for us to give it to them. And that goes back to, I think it was the first lesson, or the second lesson, where we have to always begin with ourselves. But without dealing with that, because I know that can side rail all of us, because I'm sure none of us are perfect in any of those two areas. But to the extent that we are good in those areas, we have to give that to our children, and the question is how. And maybe learning how to give it to our children will also help us ourselves, improve ourselves in these areas. Let's understand what competence means to a child. Let's look at learning exercise number 3. Okay. Here we are. Okay. So you have a child who feels competent. Let's look at A, okay? A child feels competent and feels intrinsically worthy. What would you say about that child? Is that child going to have any problem with the challenge that comes his way? No problem, right? Okay, a child feels competent but feels intrinsically unworthy. Do you think that they're motivated to do things? And the answer is, if they feel competent, yes, they're motivated to do things because they feel that they're capable of it. They may feel unworthy, intrinsically unworthy, and that may be a negative feeling they're carrying around with them, but competence is what drives someone to do things because they feel competent. If someone feels incompetent, B, and they feel intrinsically worthy, that means I feel like I'm a worthy human being, but there's no way I can do this. Am I going to take it on? No. If I feel incompetent, D, and I feel intrinsically unworthy, forget about it. Then you either become a big bully or you become very bullied. One of the two. Not necessarily that anyone that has a low self-esteem is a bully or becomes a bully. It depends on your circumstances as well, but yes, you're definitely prone to it. Let's read text number 7. This is very interesting, and I'm sure all of us can relate to it in our own way. It's sometimes we literally do not see ourselves in reality. We develop this distorted view of ourselves. And that is really what happens when a child feels incompetent in a general sense, and definitely when a child feels unworthy. Here's a very important point which has to do with worthiness, but we're not going to go there right now. Our sense of worthiness cannot be contingent upon our competence. Our sense of worthiness cannot be contingent upon whether I am able to do things or I'm not able to do certain things. Because if it is, then we are not going to feel worthy in many instances. Or we will not have intrinsic worthiness because it will always be dependent on certain things. For example, if I feel worthy because I'm wealthy, okay? Or I feel worthy because I get to stand up in front of a bunch of people and teach a class. Or I feel worthy because, I'm an outstanding musician. Whatever it is, right? The moment I lose that, if I would lose it, that can come with age where we lose the ability to do certain things, or money. Unfortunately, people lose money that they have, right? Suddenly, the worthiness that I had, which was contingent upon those things, is gone. But a human being truly does have intrinsic worth, intrinsic value. We have to connect with that, and we have to give that to our children. And that's what we're getting to. We're going to start. Let's develop how we give our children competence.